One night in the middle of the winter, the doorbell suddenly rang. When I checked the time, it was exactly 2 a.m. I wondered who it could be at this hour. As I opened the door, I saw my next-door neighbor standing there, looking somewhat angry. We hadn't spoken much before, so I was both surprised and confused by her sudden appearance. What were you thinking? Sending your sweet daughter out on a freezing winter night? I was so worried about her, so I took her to my place," she exclaimed. "What?" I stammered, at a loss for words. Behind her stood a girl who appeared to be about the same age as my daughter, shivering in the cold. Not understanding the situation and filled with both shock and concern, I quickly explained, my daughter is sound asleep in her room." Upon hearing this, my neighbor's face turned to one of surprise as she exclaimed, "What? I've never seen this girl before. Are you sure she was in front of my house?" "Yes, in front of your house. You have a daughter around this age, right?" "So, I mistakenly thought she was yours." Seeing her expression, it was clear that she too was puzzled by the situation. Behind her, the little girl was shivering from the cold. I felt pity seeing the frail figure of the girl. Little did we know that this unexpected encounter would mark the beginning of a series of tumultuous events, and no one could have predicted that our involvement with this girl would have such a profound impact on our lives. My name is Meg. I'm a 31-year-old ordinary housewife. By the way, I've been in a relationship with my husband, Mike, since we were in university. We've been together since then and got married 5 years ago. 2 years later, our precious daughter, Nancy, was born. Speaking of our marriage, our parents were so happy that they even gifted us a detached house. It has a garden, and we absolutely love it. Playing with Nancy in the evening sun has become our daily routine. However, I have a little concern. It's about Mike's job. After we got married, he decided to change his career and started a new job. Since then, his life has dramatically changed, and he's been even busier. As he goes on his business trips more often, his chance to spend his time at home significantly decreases. He's genuinely a good person and the kind of guy who refuses to say no when someone asks him for a favor. Because of this, his supposed days off during the weekends often fly by as he ends up helping his colleagues. "Mike, will you always be this busy?" One day, I mustered up the courage to ask him. He replied, I guess so, but Nancy wants to spend more time with you. Can't you make some more time for her?" "Well, it's work. I have to support our lives, don't I? But I'm also working, and I can handle things around the house. Maybe you can take it a bit easier. Perhaps consider a job with more free time," I suggested. But he responded, "Please don't worry about my job." And that was the end of that conversation. Whenever Mike is busy, I'm the one taking care of Nancy and all the household chores. I enjoy my time with her because she's so lovely. I can't help but feel exhausted, and I always wish for more time together as a couple. As winter approached, the air became biting cold. That night, the cold intensified so much that our breath turned white in the air. Mike was away on a business trip, leaving just Nancy and me at home. Cuddling in our warm blankets, I stroked Nancy's head as she drifted to sleep, then slid in next to her, intending to sleep as well. As I listened to the wind outside the window and was about to drift off, the doorbell suddenly rang. Glancing at the clock, it read 2 a.m. Who could it be at this hour? Approaching the door with anxiety, I peeked through the peephole to see my neighbor, who looked visibly upset. We weren't particularly close, just exchanging greetings occasionally, so her sudden appearance surprised me. "What were you thinking, sending your lovely daughter out on this freezing winter night?" I was so worried about her, so I took her to my place. "What?" I was at a loss for words, staring incredulously at her. Behind her stood a girl about Nancy's age, shivering and looking very cold. Confused and a mix of surprise and concern, I quickly explained, my daughter is sound asleep in her room." Upon hearing this, her eyes widened in astonishment, exclaiming, "What? Are you sure she was in front of my house? I've never seen this girl before." "Yes, right in front of your house. You have a daughter about this age, don't you? That's why I got confused." With a slightly guilty expression, the neighbor said, "Please take care of her," and hurriedly left. Taking a deep breath to calm myself, I knelt down to talk to the little girl. "What's your name?" I asked gently, taking her hand. She gripped my hand firmly, her fingers cold to the touch. "Katie," she whispered her name, her eyes tearing up as she looked at me. I squeezed her cold hand reassuringly. "Can you tell me where you came from?" "They told me to stay here." There was so much I wanted to ask her, but I just then realized she was shivering in light clothing despite the winter cold, her hair messy and unkempt. "It's okay, Katie. Let's go inside first," I said, inviting her into my home. "How old are you, Katie?" "I'm 4," she replied in a soft voice. I was taken aback. Looking at Katie, I thought she was about the same age as Nancy. My daughter had just turned 3. But Katie seemed unusually too tiny for her age. Not only was she petite, but she also looked malnourished, leading me to believe she probably wasn't getting proper meals. Why would such a lovely child be outside my house in the middle of the night? There must be some problems. I was torn about what to do. Deep down, I wanted to help Katie, but I couldn't just make decisions about a child I knew nothing about. Perhaps consulting the police was the best option. Katie, please wait a moment. I'll make you some warm milk, I told her, heading to the kitchen. As I prepared the hot milk, I called the police and explained the late-night situation. Despite the hour, they assured me they'd arrive promptly. Watching Katie's tiny hands grip the cup as she sipped the milk brought me a moment of relief. Soon after, the police arrived. Initially, they were suspicious of me and my relationship with Katie. However, after repeatedly explaining the situation, they understood. In the end, they decided to take Katie into protective custody. Even as I lay in bed, my mind was filled with thoughts of Katie. I figured I should at least let Mike, who was on a business trip, know about tonight's event. So I sent him a message. I was awakened early the next morning by the ring of my phone. Rushing to answer, as expected, it was from Mike. Why did you hand that child over to the police? His voice sounded very panicked. What do you mean? Mike, she was a stranger. It seemed like the right thing to do, but she's just a little girl. How could you? Mike cut me off, yelling. I was growing even more confused. Mike, do you know something? I could hear his heavy breathing over the phone. After a brief silence, he slowly began to explain. According to Mike, Katie seems to be the child of a friend he knows. That friend had apparently fallen ill and suddenly went missing. Therefore, Mike had decided to take care of her. What? Why would you do such a thing? I exclaimed in surprise. Mike replied with a slightly troubled expression. I couldn't just leave her alone. I thought if I brought her home, you'd be kind to her. What? You said you were on a business trip. How could you leave such a small child alone on a cold night like that? I can't believe it. I couldn't hide my anger. I pressed the intercom and told her to go inside. I never thought she would wait outside until late at night, he defended. Hearing Mike's words that sounded like excuses, my head started to ache, given that I had barely slept the previous night. The pain was intensifying. What have you done? Just come back and explain everything. I have no idea what's going on, I said, feeling tears well up, and hung up the phone. In the evening, when I returned home with Nancy and entered the room, I was surprised to find Katie sleeping on the sofa. Next to her, Mike sat silently. Mike, why is Katie here? I asked in astonishment, to which he replied as if it was obvious. I took her in. I spoke to the police and brought her back home. What? Why? Shh. Keep it down. Katie is sleeping. We left Katie, who was sleeping, and Nancy, who was engrossed in playing alone, and moved to the next room. There, I finally had Mike explain how things came to this. Who exactly is that girl? Katie, like I said, she's a child of an acquaintance. A friend of mine, Mike replied while looking down, seemingly anxious. I pressed further. Hey, where are Katie's parents? Well, her mother is gone, and her father. I think he mentioned he's hospitalized somewhere. His response sounded hesitant, as if he was hiding something. I sighed deeply. What do you intend by having us look after Katie? I thought she could spend some time with you and Nancy. What do you think? I can't just decide something like that on the spot. I have to, actually go on a business trip immediately. Wait, we're still discussing this. Ignoring me, Mike crawled his carry-on bag from another room and headed straight for the entrance. Sorry. Please take care of Katie for now. I'll explain more later. Wait, Mike. But he didn't listen. He opened the door and hurriedly left. I was playing with Nancy in the room, still confused about everything that had happened. After some time, Katie, who had been soundless sleeping, woke up. Rubbing her sleepy eyes, she murmured, "Where am I? Where's my dad? Where did he go?" Hearing Katie's words, I became convinced that my worst suspicions about the situation were correct. I pulled up a photo of Mike on my smartphone and showed it to Katie. Is this your dad, Katie? Yes, that's my dad. I thought so. Dad was here before, right? Where did he go? As I tried to comfort the despondent Katie, I dialed Mike's number with slightly trembling fingers, but he didn't answer. Suppressing the anger welling up inside me, I smiled at Katie and asked, "Katie, what's your mom's name?" "Mom, my mom's name is Rose. I don't know where she is." It was my first time hearing the name Rose. What could be her relationship with my husband? I wanted to hear more from Katie. As I looked at her, I noticed something on her face. I reached out with a wet tissue to wipe it off for her, but Katie flinched. shrugging her shoulders and covering her face with her hands. I'm sorry. Please don't hit me. Tears filled Katie's eyes, a mixture of surprise and fear evident in them. It's hard to imagine what kind of painful experiences she must have gone through. To reassure her, I gently hugged her. It's okay. This is a place where you'll be safe. In my arms, Katie cries big tears. I thought, how much pain must such a small child have gone through? And felt a warmth in my eyes. That night, after bathing Katie and Nancy, I combed their hair and watched over them until they fell asleep. Katie's peaceful sleeping face looked so much like Nancy. I had to protect these kids. I realized that I had to face reality. First, I had to find out what Mike had been up to. I called him again, but he didn't answer. In hopes of finding some clues, I searched his room and noticed that his bank book and personal seal were missing. The most conclusive evidence, however, was a letter I found in his jacket. To Mike, I can't love Katie any longer, since I'm no longer needed. If you aren't going to divorce your wife, you can have her. I'm starting a new life in a new place. I love you, Rose. After reading the letter, I felt as if the ground beneath me was collapsing. I called Mike again, but this time, all I heard was a voice message saying, "The number you've dialed is not working." I can't believe it, I muttered and instinctively crouched down. From that day on, Mike disappeared from our lives. Time slowly passed, and before I knew it, 7 years had gone by. Since the day Mike disappeared, I had not received anything from him. As for Katie, she was initially sent to a child welfare institution, but her presence always lingered in my heart. I truly wanted to welcome her as a member of our family. With that thought, I decided to adopt Katie. Katie and Nancy have been getting along as if they've been together since birth, living every day with smiles and laughter. At some point, the two started creating children's videos. Their adorable appearances and the fun content quickly gained popularity, and in no time, fans gathered. They became widely known by the community and even appeared on TV and magazines. I, as their biggest supporter, was enjoying every busy yet fulfilling day with them. Then, on an ordinary weekday evening, the house's intercom rang. When I opened the door, I was taken aback. There stood Mike, with ragged clothes and unkempt hair, and beside him was an unfamiliar woman. I instantly realized this was Katie's biological mother, Rose. I asked Katie and Nancy to continue playing in their room upstairs, and then invited Mike and Rose into the living room. Meg, it's been a while, Mike began with a solemn expression. The truth is, Katie is my child with Rose. A sigh escaped me involuntarily. Yay, I know. So what? Why are you here? I was filled with a mix of indifference and annoyance. Choosing his words carefully, Mike continued. He said that early in our marriage, he frequently visited a bar where he met Rose. Before he knew it, they had a child together. Wanting to avoid divorcing me, he continued hiding his relationship with Rose. But Rose, frustrated that Mike had no intentions of leaving me, left that revealing letter and disappeared. Leave a child behind. Mike, seemingly at a loss, had abandoned his child at my place and hastily went after Rose. While my face remained calm, I was seething inside. So, that's it. That's all you came to say. Fine, can you please leave now? I tried to keep my voice gentle, pushing for them to depart. Mike, on the verge of tears, knelt down in front of me. Meg, please, can you give Katie back to us? What are you talking about? For the first time, Rose, who had been silent till now, spoke up. I saw on TV that Katie has become a very famous YouTuber. Friends told me to. Isn't she making a lot of money? What's that got to do with anything? Well, we're struggling a bit financially. We thought if Katie came back, everyone would be happier. Apparently, they'd found out about Katie's success and came to get her back, thinking of the monetary gains. After once declaring she was unwanted, now they demand her back. She is my daughter, our family, and you come back after all this time. Just stop it, I shouted at them. Rose's eyes flared in anger. Katie is my child. I gave birth to her. I want to live with my real daughter. You should have thought of that earlier. Leave now, you old hag. As Rose lunged at me, Katie stepped in between, pushing her mother away. Rose, while on the ground, looked at Katie and spoke in a soft voice. Katie, it's been a while. Remember me? I'm your real mother. Tears sparkled in Katie's eyes, but her voice was firm. That doesn't matter. My real mother is right here. My true family. Hearing that, Mike, with a slightly troubled expression, said, Katie, won't you come back with your real parents? You'll surely be happier with us. You've said it yourself. You're not like any parent to me. Do you plan on pretending you don't remember the terrible things you did to me? Just go away already. I held the trembling, teary-eyed Katie close to me, comforting her. Rose had written to Mike long ago. You left Katie alone in the cold dead of winter and didn't contact her for years. And now you suddenly want to act like her parents. Just stop it already. Yes, we abandoned her, Mike admitted with a desperate look and shaky voice. But we've changed now. Please, give her back to us. I took a deep breath and replied coldly, that's impossible. Legally, I am her parent now. What do you mean? I adopted her. Katie is my daughter now. Rose's eyes widened in shock. Ignoring her, Mike, looking more desperate, suggested, then we can start over. I'll break up with Rose. Let's begin a new life with the four of us. What? What are you talking about? Rose exclaimed in disbelief. Ignoring her again, Mike grabbed my hand, pleading, please, let's make it right this time. Meg, you remember, right? Our times together back then. Let's get back that happiness. I was truly taken aback. I answered with a bitter smile. You know, Mike, we divorced a long time ago. Mike was dumbfounded, his mouth agape. After you disappeared, I filed for divorce 3 years later. We're no longer husband and wife. No way. I turned my gaze from the stunned Mike to Rose beside him and declared, so both of you will have to take responsibility for abandoning Katie. Just then, the sound of sirens could be heard from outside. It seemed Nancy, worried about the situation, had called the police. It seems the police are here. Now, both of you, don't ever show up in front of us again. Don't disrupt the life of us three anymore. Hey, Meg, wait. Please forgive me. Help me out. Both Mike and Rose seemed to be shouting and pleading with teary eyes, but I had no intention of listening. Soon enough, the police took them away swiftly. I demanded compensation and child support from the two of them. They, already struggling without even enough for living expenses, tried to get out of paying by begging relatives and acquaintances for help. However, they were not only consistently refused, but also ended up being ostracized. I don't know what they will do now. And since our relationship is severed, I probably won't know more than just rumors. Now, the three of us are living peaceful days. Nancy and Katie are my treasures. On a recent Mother's Day, the two of them surprised me with gifts, and I was so moved that I couldn't stop crying. With my two precious daughters, I look forward to creating many more happy moments in the future.